Dzień dobry Państwu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to thank you very much for your attendance. We're pleased to have this face-to-face meeting with you in order to be able to talk with you about the situation of the company. We want to separate myth from fact, and so we'd like to present the strategy for the upcoming 3 years. We're going to talk about what's been happening in the company and what will be done. We've worked on the strategy with the full management team, and my endorsement was given on everything. I fully can subscribe to everything that's been written here and what's going to be conveyed to you, and I fully authorize that. Let me give you I'll make one small set of remarks at the end of the conference, and then we'll try to answer any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for your introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good opportunity to sum up the last 3 years and what's going to happen over the upcoming years. As the chairman has said, as you can see, this is the beginning of the strategy presentation. It's called Go 2022, and so it's very concisely. I think we have some sort of technical problem with the sound system. I hope we're going to be able to solve this quickly. So this name concisely reflects what we have in mind. Go means our dynamic striving to achieve our goals. And so we have a change in the model. We don't want to just keep developing brick and mortar stores, and 2022 gives us the time of evaluation by when we should achieve the full objectives that we've intended in our strategy. And so we can talk about our objectives for the upcoming 3 years. So the speakers today, we have the chairman of the supervisory board, who's also responsible for product marketing and expansion. Then we also have Marcin Grzymkowski. You've said many times that you'd like to meet with him. This is also understandable because eobuwie is responsible for 25% of our top line and a big portion of our business. And then we have Karol Potarak, who's responsible for development and all of the new things in e-commerce and some of the positive changes that are taking place in the group. And then me, Marcin Czyżewski, and I have the pleasure and the ability, I have the pleasure of being the CEO, and I've been in this position since the end of 2019. And so this presentation has 3 parts. So we'll talk about the introduction, we'll have the stock taking exercise, and then we'll talk about the group strategy. So in our diagnosis or our stock taking exercise, we want to talk to you about how we've arrived at our conclusions and what we believe. And then we can look at our evaluation of the future and what directions and avenues we intend to follow. And so if we talk about where we are today and some of the changes so we are an entity with a wide range of products, and you'll see that from the spring-summer collection of 2020. We are a world of fascinating stores that have been very well prepared to expand in an omni-channel basis in CCC, as well as in our showrooms for eobuwie. So we have well-developed e-commerce sales channels. So we've got web pages, and we also have mobile. So we have a major scale. So if we look at some of the details in the e-commerce as well as in our brick and mortar presence, we're a very big company with a lot of upside potential. And if we start to turn a few screws, we're going to be able to drive up the value quite considerably. So we have nearly 1,250 stores and 760,000 square meters of space. In e-commerce, we have some 30 plus sales platforms with Modivo, eobuwie, and others. We're present in many countries. We have a certain amount of concentration. We'll talk about that later. And we've got a lot of development behind us in terms of building our magnitude, our scale. Many companies are growing fast, but growing a business by 3 times in the course of 5 years. This is something that not too many companies can brag about. As a result of this growth in our key market, Central and Eastern Europe, we've been able to achieve the position of the unquestioned leader with a 20% market share where you see the countries where we are. And so we have a very strong position on the Polish market. And so this is the strength and the competitive advantage of the company. As is the case with major growth, we've not been able to avoid some mistakes. So we're now tweaking those mistakes, adjusting them, correcting for them. And so this is a good point in time to take stock, to see how we as the management team, as CSC, believe where the company is. And then we want to structure our operations because we have a huge level of operations that we've engaged upon in the last 3 years. And some of you have even told us that you've ceased to understand where we are because of the size of the group. So we're now focusing on specific areas, and this will enable us to show you our growth even better. So the directions of growth and how the entire management team, all of our managers, we want to show you where we want to go, how we want to get there, and there's a very good opportunity for us to have some tools to track progress in terms of where we are today and where we're going, and we want to streamline our communication with the marketplace as well as with our staff. So to sum up the last 3 years, we've selected this slide, which shows how we've built the success of CCC, how we scaled up our model based on brick-and-mortar stores, how we've implemented eobuwie, and it's become part of the CCC path. And so you can see the sales annualized for the last 12 months. So sales density, basically measured by square meters, in square meters. So we had in 2017 we reached the peak, and we took a very optimistic view of what's going to happen later in terms of expanding the square meters of selling space and further acquisitions. And so we've overestimated how well this model would function. And so that's why, as you can see on the very bottom of the graph, we had a lot of growth in our inventory as a result of purchases in 2017. And so this basically deferred or delayed change implementation. So these observations are ones that we've had since 2018. This is not something new. So we've been introducing changes since then. And our changes are taking us in the direction of devising a model, an optimum omni-channel model, which will be taken to perfection and would enable us to grow very swiftly. We'll talk about the weather and how it hasn't been conducive to our approach. And so basically, we're now treating this as a long-term trend. So basically, our inventory, some of our debt, and so we had to make sure that our organization, we had to press the enter button and make major changes in our IT systems. And so we lost a lot of sales in Q1 2019. And so we've been building step by step this organization to deploy an omni-channel model. This has not been yet completed, but we're at a very high degree of completion. We have a lot of progress, and this gives the company a great opportunity to regain that level of profitability that you've seen in the past, and to refine the model to make sure that we're going to be able to scale it up in the future. So we have overcome the inventory-related problems in terms of the products we had. So up until 2017, this was our advantage, but in the period 2017-2019, it was not our advantage, but once again, it will be our advantage in 2020. See, these are things that accompanied us over the last 3 years, but this stress test, this last 2 years of stress test in 2018 and 2019, we've been able to build a hardier organization, and I hope you'll be able to see that in the course of today's presentation. So if we look at our market assessment, is it a problem of the company or the market? Here, we couldn't find ourselves on a better market. The CEE is the most rapidly growing market across Europe. And this is the place where we are focusing our efforts. This is a market that has a stable growth footprint. So if you look at the pace of growth in retail and e-commerce, there's a major difference between that and what we have in brick and mortar stores. And so we have to focus on omnichannel and online business, but we see growth in brick and mortar stores, but that's somehow just apparent growth. But we can see shifts in the product range. There are purchasing impulses, and there are things here that we have to prepare ourselves to handle. If you look at Southern Europe, it's a very interesting location. We're only present there through e-commerce. So we want to show you the low level of e-commerce concentration on that part of the market, and this would explain why eobuwie is present there. So if we look at all of these changes, so you can see basically a cross-section of the various research or analyses that we've provided. So we have some 8 major trends which will trigger major changes on the marketplace, and this means that we will have to adapt to them. The first one, which is a crucial trend, is the change in the way in which sales operations reach customers. So the customer has a lot of opportunities to make purchases, and he's sort of, or she's somehow in 24/7 poised to make purchases. So you have televisions, you have application pushes, you've got internet, you've got internet banners, you've got CRM. There's a large number of efforts being taken in which CCC was not able to participate actively until recently. And so we've been preparing ourselves to do this. Then the function of brick and mortar stores is changing. So they will engage customers or they will have to be shut down. And so CCC has made the biggest step in terms of its new concept for its brick and mortar stores. And here we've not said our last word. So personalization and developing a direct relationship with customers. So it's easier to encroach on competition space. So you've got growing competition. So the understanding of trends and fashion across our portion of Europe. There's much more awareness than there was several years ago. And so a mass product which is not aligned to these trends has no opportunity to survive. So we can see what we call sneakerization, so more and more casual shoes. So this is something that we didn't have in the organization up until 2017 was this climate change. It was seen somehow as an excuse, but we can see that weather is no longer the key driving force behind making purchase decisions. So this is a trend and a fact that the organization has to learn to accommodate. And then we have a growing environmental awareness and responsibility amongst our customer bases, contingencies. And so that means we have to have a responsible approach to our environment. These are the key trends we see. Other documents have confirmed them. And they form the basis for our operations. So how well is the company prepared for them? We have some competitive advantages, of course. So we're very well prepared to accommodate these trends. We're the expert, we're the leader, we've got the scale, we've got a unique combination of two sales platforms. So we have brick and mortar stores and we have, of course, e-commerce. We have an enormous customer base of 10 million loyal customers. We know quite a bit about our customers. We have strong private brands and we can invest even more. We've got our own production capacity, enabling us to generate very unrivaled production margins. Then we've invested in technological solutions. In the past, this was one of the things that slowed us down. Now it will be an enabler. We do have some challenges. We have big challenges. We have to complete the process of aligning the product mix to actual demand. We have to strengthen our communication in terms of our brands and the meanings of these brands. We have to have more balanced expansion. So we have to standardize and streamline. And so we have to operate on takt times. So having in mind our approach to being able to accommodate all of the things that are changing in the marketplace. Then we have a new marketing strategy, and then we have to complete the integration of the acquired companies. So if we look at the strategy of the group, it has been put together in the following manner. As a management team, we are interested in multiplying the value of the company many times. So if we look at value, we're thinking about price. So we're thinking about the things that depend on us, and we're looking at the most important things in terms of the group's value. So every trading company has to think about customers. Customers have to be at the very center, at the core, and no company can forget about that. And we want to be present across all of the omnichannels. We want to have the product. So as we go through the omnichannels, we want to have a very good blend of methods for customers to buy our products. It has to meet the stores, it has to meet the sales channels, and the various groups of customers. And we see a lot of difference amongst our customers. A company that's agile and efficient will eliminate some of this waste, and it has to be responsible, to be financially stable, and it has to engage in sustainable development. As you continue to see the strategy, we can see that we've got specific targets, figures, as well as metrics, which we will apply to track how we're doing. So we want to start with the most important, the quintessence of driving the value growth of the company. So the customer is at the very center of our ecosystem. And so many retailers have said, look, I've never seen anything like what you have. You've got a true ecosystem in terms of reaching a variety of customers in a variety of constituencies. We've got the traditional stores, brick and mortar stores. We've got hybrid stores. We've got mobile applications. We've got e-Size Me, which recommends sizes. And we can have style recommendations and other things. We have a variety of web pages where we're showing customers what we have. We've got advanced CRM tools to understand what's going on in our customers' minds. We're trying to roll out new clothing ideas through Modivo and so on and so forth. So we want to reach more markets, and you can see where we want to develop, where we will be strongly present in 2020. So I think we'll be able to put a check mark in a number of these places where you see 2020 that we will have reached those markets. And so we want to develop those channels and those markets. We want to do that because, as Marcin said, we have a very good base, a customer base. I don't think there are many players who would have a double-digit customer base measured in the millions. And as you see, it is growing. In 2019, we've got twice as many customers in our loyalty program as we had a year ago. And so we want to have in mind the tools that our teams have at their disposal to understand customers and what they need and to monetize that. And we want to make sure that we have greater satisfaction for customers, and at the same time we would attract greater margins for the company. And so there are a couple of things that are quite important. More than 60% of our retail transactions in our stores we're able to track, and we're able to assign them to unique customer profiles. So this is a database that's growing from year to year. So this is a huge quantum of information. And so this will continue to evolve over time. So up until now, we've only had, one store, in the sense of the brick and mortar network, and now we have the two channels. So we've got e-commerce. So we can see after we analyze the data in the latter half of 2019, so 80% more revenue generated by omni-channel customers versus traditional customers. It's hard to rely on a single 6-month period, but if we utilize a variety of channels, we'll be able to grow that top line. So the more channels we offer, the more channels customers utilize. They're present in e-commerce, our mobile application, as well as in the brick and mortar stores. And they've been spending more than in the past. And so if we look at some of our strategic CRM objectives, one of the things that we want to do is what we started, which is to propagate that across new markets. So the incremental margin is something that we've garnered on the Polish market. This is where we started, but there are a large number of other very interesting markets with a large number of customers. So we want to tap into that potential. So prior to the summer period, we will have a full view, 360-degree view of our customers. So in CCC, DZ, Gina Rossi. And so this is a matter of introducing, rolling out new tools and things like that. And another important thing, and so you can't imagine a modern organization without this, a modern retail organization where offline and online would be blended to ensure that we can see our customers in our digital channels, and we'll be able to close that loop, not only in terms of bringing the online purchase to a conclusion, which is probably the simplest, but if we look at the customer paths, we also see that it frequently ends in front of the cash till in a store. So if we follow the customers, what we want to do in the upcoming years. So this is the primary message. We want to focus where we're the strongest, where we're number one or number two. So we want to strengthen or bolster our position, give customers a lot more. So more than 80% of our top line comes from CE, and this is where we want to invest our time. If we look at new markets, because you're going to ask that question as well, where do you want to grow the greatest? So we see Romania, and so we will open proportionally the largest number of brick and mortar stores. It's a very interesting market for brick and mortar presence, for e-commerce, for eobuwie. So this is half of Poland in terms of size. And there's a large number of stores in Russia where we can see that this model is acceptable and our product has been received well by the market. So we have 9 channels and we have countries, and so we hope that we're going to be able to attract more business in these various geographic markets. If we look at our brick and mortar stores, we're not only talking about new square meters, or maybe not exclusively. A few years ago, we could allow ourselves to do that. Now we can see that a large amount of this positive change is to be done With respect to our current fleet of stores, we've got more than 1,200 stores. There's a lot of things for us to do in terms of costs, so renegotiating with vendors the lease amounts or rents, what should happen in our stores, and this should give us some major savings in terms of the operating expenses for this base of stores. So if we say that we're good or very good in the digital world, we want customers in the store to understand that they're not being treated worse if they come into a store. And so there are certain things that we have to replicate there. In the middle of the slide, you see some examples of things that we've already introduced or will roll out. So if you're introducing something that's already perfect, that means you've done it too late. So we have more than 200 e-size me islands. By the end of the year, we want to have all of our stores with online kiosks. This is part of a project that we've completed because some of these e-size islands are basically online kiosks. So we want the ability for customers to be able to order, a fashion or a size of a shoe that's not present in the store, to make sure that we can send it from our warehouse in Zielone Góry to that customer same day or next day. So our experience is something we want to share with our customers, a good trend in terms of how customer service should be followed. So in the latter half of this year, after vacation, we should have self-service checkout counters in our stores. So this will be something good for our customers. And so we can look at our total sales in e-commerce. We have to understand the like-for-like sales on a combined footing. So if you look at our online sales compared to total sales, we see a 4% ratio. And so the organization is well poised to understand that this is the total like-for-like sales figure and not one that's broken down. And this is something that we're pleased with. If we look at our new stores, we're much more selective. So some of the numbers are following. And there's a large number of openings and closings and reallocation and also change in the format of the stores in terms of stores with like 580 square meters. And if you look at the fleet of internet websites, we've got 30 of them. We're doing that in an intelligent basis. So we have the logistics, we have the support, and the central role being played by eobuwie. And we can say this is a global class, top of the class player. We have a shared inventory. Frequently, complex organizations have those kind of problems. So any organization has a customer, has the right to utilize that warehouse. We have shared IT, and these are things that we're arriving at. And another thing is the lack of cannibalization. We see that even if there's a customer overlap, it's small level. But through CRM, we want to manage customers in such a way and direct customers to that area where we can derive slightly higher margins. So I'll give the floor to Marcin. The last 3 years was a period of strategy execution to become the leader in CEE in online sales. We've been growing at a pace of nearly 70% year on year. So we represent 85% of total revenue, or 85% of our total revenue comes from the CE. So this is what, so we can say that 30-some% of our sales comes from Poland. So we're still growing quite strongly in Poland. What's very important here is that we're limiting the risk posed by local competition, as well as weather factors. Other factors have a smaller and smaller impact on us. We've been quite stable. We've got roughly 70% market share in CE. If we go on to the next slide, one of the biggest challenges we faced was logistics, because our current logistics center where we're operating, it was possible to sell 800 million to a max of 1 billion. Our sales were nearly 1.5 billion last year. So we had to face major challenges because of constraints. We had to hire people. We had 5 warehouses that we had to consolidate the procurements for. In large promotion periods, we had to sort of cap marketing to make sure that we could deliver products on time, because otherwise we would have had major time lags. All of this is part of the past, because we've been able to complete a major investment in the form of a modern logistics center. It's state-of-the-art in terms of utilization of technological solutions. We're one of 3 companies in the world to use peaking robotics. So we'll have an automatic packing machine used in the near future, because that was robot order picking. And so we have some 10,000 items per hour throughput in our sorter. And with certain expansions, it could be pumped up to 20,000. So in the near future, in Q1, we want to start sending packages from that new center. So we've started to send products to the smallest market in Sweden. And so if that works out in our pilot, then we'll bring on board new markets. So we want to reduce our logistics costs linked to dispatching a single package. Our estimates suggest that we could reduce those costs by 16%. We've got a piece of land purchased next to our logistics center. If we need to scale that up, what else should we add? So the biggest costs have already been incurred to build this building, as well as the logistics machines. And so we'll have some costs in order to expand the logistics center, but they'll be much smaller. Mostly just some construction costs to expand the production facility. And at the end, the most important thing is that this central logistics center has been prepared to deliver also clothing for Modivo. And so we had the premium fashion online store Modivo. And so as an organization, we've encountered a large number of problems because there was a large number of processes that we had to learn, implement. We're pleased in terms of the progress of this work. We do encounter some problems in terms of stability, workload, and of the website, but we've addressed them because for some time now, we've been working on a new platform. So we're testing this on Modivo. This should take place in Q2. And once this is embraced well, we want to deploy these tested solutions in the end of the year, next year, in eobuwie. Nevertheless, we're still quite pleased with the financial results. We've been growing at 50%. But in December, we generated sales in excess of 19 million zlotys in December alone. January should be even better. So Modivo is present on 11 markets. So we want to launch the next 3 markets. And so in Q2 and Q3, we'll have a pilot store in a brick and mortar store. So this will be one of the newest stores. It will utilize some of the newest solutions available, as in eobuwie. So what has this given us? We have the ability to generate but much fatter margins, because in clothing the margins are usually much bigger. We're also able to get better trading terms from our suppliers, and we're also able to better utilize our marketing costs, which are growing year in year, and we're able to cross-sell our users. And so if a customer buys shoes 4 or 5 times a year on eobuwie, we'll also be able to sell jeans and coats and caps and things of that nature. So we'll utilize the traffic much better, meaning that the lifetime value of a customer will grow quite substantially. So then if we look at the technology, which is one of the pillars of our operations, we're very pleased with eSeisme. Last year, we generated some 72 million in sales thanks to eSeisme. We're pleased with the metrics because we can see more and more people are utilizing eSeisme, and this is measured by the lifetime value of the customer as well as the ticket value. So this means that last year had relatively limited access to this technology. We only had it in a few tens of stores and islands. Now we have more than 200 scanning points in the network, and that means we're going to be able to identify the ability to utilize this technology more quickly. We're one of the world's largest companies with such a large number of scanners in eobuwie. We also have massive technology to produce the insert soles, which means the shoes are much more comfortable for the customers. So we're in the testing phase. Customers have the ability to access this, and then we're going to want to promote it and promote this service quite strongly. So if I move on to the next slide, the outlook and the plans for the upcoming 3 years within the framework of the strategy. So we want to continue strengthening our position in CEE, and so in Modivo, we also want to be one of the top 3 players if we talk about the sales of premium apparel. So our plans for 2022, so we want to have a top line of 3 billion, which seems to be an ambitious goal, but it's something that's doable if we look at eobuwie. So we want to have 35% growth in 2020, then 26% growth in 21, and 23% growth in 2022. And if we look at the historical growth of eobuwie, so it seems that it's possible, and the support will be the additional sales platform Modivo for apparel. And so we think that its market share will be somewhere between 10 and 15%. So we want to maintain a profitability of around 8 to 10%, which is also an ambitious target, having in mind the various challenges present on the marketplace. But new logistics, better utilization of marketing, new platform, margin expansion, all of these things should support this. So the 4 most important pillars of growth for eobuwie: the product, logistics, technology, and marketing. We're very pleased with the product and marketing. So turnover is quite good, around 115, 120 days in terms of its turnover ratio. If we look at logistics, this has been addressed by our new logistics center, If we think about technology, as I've mentioned, we have a new e-commerce system which will utilize microservices, making it possible for us to scale our processes much better, and we'll be able to roll out new services as we have a new CRM, and we'll be able to do many other services, offer many other services as well. And if we look at marketing, we'll have better utilization of Modivo as something that will reduce our marketing expenses or augment the lifetime value of our customers, which in turn will also improve the valuation. So in Q4, we can say that the average basket value is 380 zlotys in eobuwie, and in Modivo it's also quite high at 569 zlotys. So our own brands, eobuwie, are responsible for some 5% of sales, and it's also responsible for the margin. So it's 2% higher than the average margin that we have on total sales. So this year we want to have another 2 brands. So we've purchased a brand last year, and then we've signed a long-term contract for another brand, and so we'll be able to launch another brand in eobuwie. So we want for the online and offline worlds to be interwoven to ensure that we're, through our acquisitions, able to grow offline as well as online. So we have 20 stores here. We want to add another several stores, but in Poland we'd like to have roughly 30 stores. We're also planning this year to have our first store out of Poland in Prague. So this will be a service store to make sure that it would lead to greater market recognition, which is already high, but we want to ramp that up as well. So right now we've got 81% brand awareness, and we've been able to increase that factor consistently over time. So 50% of online business comes from the major cities, and so we're waiting for this store. So it'll be opened in the summer period, and then December, one of the conferences, a brokerage, holds a conference in Prague, and we'll have an additional investor day. We can show you some of the capabilities of that store while being in Prague, and then we can dwell upon that at greater length. And so this growth in our channels and their interconnectability means that we're going to be able to align the offering to customer expectations while expanding it. And then having a very good product, we're going to be able to build the value of the company. So our strategy is quite important. We want to strengthen our key brands. We have 6 key brands, which are flagship brands. Some of them have a very high awareness, and some of them have greater awareness than CCC, certainly than the competition. So we call them the flagships, like Lasocki. We've been selling that for more than 20 million zlotys, and we've invested in the quality starting last year. And so we want to augment our marketing value. So we've focused on improving the quality of our products, and this is something we've done in 2019. And this is something you'll see in the stores, on the store shelves in 2020, and you can see that in our quality parameters. We've also done more and more in terms of sneakerization. So they represent now 20% of our sales. A couple of years ago, we didn't have them at all. So our private brands are very important to us, and you can see some of them in our showroom in terms of what will be on the store shelves in the near future. And so we're working with Instagram, with influencers, And this is something that's being done in the fashion world. We're expanding the fashion presence through this showroom and working with the fashion world. And then through this fashion category, it's our intention to be present. And then we'll have the third e-commerce only offering. So companies that work in both channels have much bigger offers. And so we want to do this in CC. There's a lot of interesting things that are happening there. So we have some products that started to sell in March, and we started to sell them in the 50 some odd week of the year, and they're still being sold. And so there's a lot of opportunity to expand the product offering. So I think we have an idea in terms of making sure that we can retain the premium nature of Gino Rossi sales with a target of 2 million pairs. And I think the chairman of the supervisory board will be able to say quite a bit more about that subject. And so we want to ramp up the margin of 50 watts. And so then we want to have some accessories. And so we have higher growth rates than we do in shoes or in footwear. And so sales density is on the rise. And we'll be able to increase the value of tickets. Then we have product preparation. So we want to make sure that deliveries are made on time. We want to sell at the early price, bring in the products in early, start having shorter sales periods, making sure that we generate the margins and not just concentrating on sales. Then we have eco products, so using ecological leather or products that are recycled from plastics or other products. So from oceans, beaches, or sea beaches. So in 2019, being aware of some of our own imperfections, and as we tested the limits of marketing communication, we greatly reduced marketing. The share of voice fell by 1/3. We spoke more frequently than this graph suggests. But when we talked about sports, you remember some of these campaigns, we didn't speak too much about the product and virtually nothing about the brand. We'll change that this year. And so the marketing strategy that we're refining at present is largely focused on the brands, the CCC brand. We want to be present with the same amount of volume as we were in the past. So this is our market. And so we're going to make sure that our competition doesn't feel comfortable here. We're changing the marketing mix. We're trying to modernize it. So this is not a simple, straight path from the TV screen to the store. There are a few other media that weren't there in the past. And we started or embarked on this path in early November. And we're going to continue following this path to acquire those fashion categories. And so the quality and the breadth of the offer and perception is something else. And so we're trying to utilize new communication, marketing communication, strategy communication to bring in more customers. So we're strengthening the brands because we want to bring in traffic to various sales channels. In Poland, we have 9 sales channels. And so we can sell our shoes through 9 different channels. So now we're able to bring in some of the younger customers who are more demanding, especially through Instagram presence, and making sure that we communicate correctly with our key customer groups. And the last strategy for Modivo and eobuwie, as you've seen. So these groups aren't entirely overlapping. If we look at the processes and their effectiveness, as a result of this strong change, we're going to be able to do quite a bit more. Also, in terms of what we know about the customer, this constant collection of communication, opinions of customers, and to make sure that the product and the offering and the promotion is well fitted to customer needs. And this enables us at the cost level to integrate all of the technology in all of our sales channels. And that way we can eliminate some of the manual processes, paper-based. So in our stores, we are producing more than 1 million sheets of A4 paper. And so we're not thinking about the value of the paper, but the value that comes from that. And we're trying to eliminate that paper by utilizing this technology we've deployed recently. Now the time has come for us to monetize these technologies. And the last element of streamlining the organization is to make sure that we can restate the values. We talked about them recently. They're critical, and they are how we summon the organization, what we expect, and what do we expect of ourselves as the management team, what we expect of our middle management and of our teams. We've got a great team, and we believe it will concentrate more and more on the internal and external customers, people who will be in love with the organization, with the products we have in this organization. We want people to be engaged and dynamic, focused on collaboration. We're a strong team, provided that we're trying to score together and we're taking responsibility for our customers, and then we want to offer personal development. The fact that we're good today doesn't mean we're going to be good enough tomorrow. So within the organization, we're trying to restate those values, revise them, and so we're going to have a team working on that which believes in those values. So as we finalize what this should give us, and I'm looking at our chairman in terms of the mythology. So financial stability. We are in a totally different spot in terms of our needs for capital. And those major technological changes that have taken place, expanding warehouses. So the warehouse that the CEO of Elbuvi mentioned a moment ago, up until the end of last year, this was something that we only spent money on. This was these were investment outlays, nearly 200 million. We had to basically send also shipments from 5 different shops, centers, mistakes, and we weren't achieving those benefits. Now we have only the benefits. That's the difference between the last 3 years and the 3 years we have in front of us. We're only going to be reaping the advantages. We don't have to invest as much. Our investment spend outlay will be much smaller. So the average capex for the next 3 years is going to be 150, 200 million compared to 700 million. So 200 million in 2020. So the ability to generate much more operating cash flow, and we're going to be able to achieve a target profitability of 8.5%, 9.5%. Previously, this was not the strength of CCC, but it is the strength. So we're improving our cash conversion. Also, our inventory turnover ratios. We have a much larger organization now, and the stock didn't have to increase because we improved conversion rates. But a lot of other things, positive things, will be happening. So at the end of Q1, our net debt to EBITDA is higher than as at the end of the year. So we believe that it's possible to have an EBITDA to debt ratio of 3 or 2.3. So we don't see any danger to the covenants we have. So we're building a story for an additional rights issue under authorized capital. That's just a gossip. That's just gossip in the best world of worlds. So it's the ambition of the management team. By the end of 2022, we want to be around zero, but our ultra ambition is that we want to be cash positive. And so we believe the actions we're taking, the measures we're taking, since we've completed our investments and we're monetizing them and we're improving our processes and we know how to do that and we've already proven that, we're going to consistently follow this path. So as I bring to a conclusion, wrap up our narrative about sustainable development, this is something that's quite important to me and to all of us. We see how the consumer is changing. We see that in other countries this is happening with more pronounced strength and others with less strength. So we look at Romania, Bulgaria, Western Europe. In other countries, maybe it's happening to a lesser extent, but here we can see that the ecological awareness is growing. We are amongst the avant-garde players, and so in terms of the changes we're making to the product or to the environment, so we're executing several things to ensure that CCC will be perceived as a sustainable development company. So several more things have not been stated or commented upon in the strategy, so we'd like to respond to them before they're brought up. We want to show you some of the growth scenarios. So the IPO of Eobuwie, we said we've suspended it. It would be a useful thing for sorting out the Eobuwie strategy, but until it monetizes everything that it's done, and it will monetize those things, as the CEO said, then we're not going to talk about an IPO until that occurs. The IPO is an avenue, but Eobuwie is a very valuable asset, and it's proven its value in every single quarter. We have an option to acquire a 25% stake in Eobuwie. Our cooperation has gone very well, so this option will elapse in 2022. We want to have the capital in hand to do that, but we're going to think about the opportunity to extend that option. The cooperation amongst the shareholders in Eobuwie, it'll be done based on 2021 results as building value, and we as the main shareholder in Eobuwie, we're pleased with that, and this is what we're focusing on. If we look at Western Europe and the DACH countries, this is not a strategic region. We can speak about this quite honestly. We will want to deliver on our promises and our declarations in terms of profitability in Switzerland. We believe so. We're happy with the progress in the P&L and the costs. We didn't achieve profitability in 2019, but we're working on this. We'll see where that path will take us. But after 2020, we assume that we won't have any losses generated by Vogele in the CCC results. So if we look at HRG, we're talking about CCC sold CCC Germany to another entity, and this work is going well, and so we have a unilateral option to buy a stake there, and this depends on the success there in Switzerland. We're improving the cooperation and the results in Switzerland. We'll think about that option. We'll consider it profoundly, but only on the basis of what we're going to be able to achieve in Switzerland. And if you look at CCC Austria, the last quarter was better year on year. A lot of progress in terms of costs and margins, but we have a restructuring year there as well. This is a year where we're closing stores as opposed to opening stores. Although we believe that if you have the right product, this would be a profitable country. We don't plan any new acquisitions. So we have Eubovia, Romania, Gino Rossi, Adler, and TZ. These are all successful projects. We can say that they were successful and profitable projects for CCC. We would do them again. We're now focusing fully on organic growth with no new acquisitions planned in the upcoming time window. And so we have to wrap up what we're doing at Fogla, and these are some of the things that we've not completed yet. So if we look at the strategy and the figures, so if we have a summary of all of the figures in the strategy on a single slide, but the most important we think the group will continue to grow by 50%, with the proper mix of omni-channel. And so we believe that we'll be able to have online representing some 35–40% of total sales in the group. This is something that's quite unique, but several more years down the road, we believe that these two pillars will become equal to one another. We believe that the gross margin, even though we have some dilution because Eubovia has lower margins than we have in CCC, but we do see some potential for growth and to build value in terms of the ticket. Profitability, operationally speaking, should be around 8.5–9.5%. That's ultra optimistic, but we believe it's somewhere between 8.5% and 9.5%. And so we're believing that our net debt to EBITDA margin will be somewhere between 0 and 1 times. And then the ESG assessment rating, because of our sustainable development, we believe that we should have a rating of A+. Right now we're at a BBB, and we're continuing to grow. We want to address the mega trends that we've talked about. All of this shows that we're going to revisit the operating profitability we had in the past. We're going to operate at a bigger scale. What's important here is that this will be done under a model that is customized to the current trends and is scalable. So today we're going to focus on profitability, and we want to regain our profitable position through the measures that we've presented to you. And what also is important, we've written this down into notes in the organization. We understand the various contributing elements. Then we have the sales, how we want to improve conversion, how we want to improve the ticket value. So all of these objectives have been cascaded through the organization, and they're the basis for the long-term objectives of the management, having in mind also the bonuses that people have, and that means that we should have commonality within the objectives we as a company, as an organization have. So it's not just the case that we're talking about these objectives, but these objectives have now been conveyed to all of the units, the departments, and they're now being done. Now, in terms of wrapping up things, I think it would be best if the chairman of our supervisory board were to do that. So I'll go ahead and give him the floor at this time. So perhaps I would share with you and wrap this up as the founder, major shareholder, and a person who spends all of his time working for CCC. 2 years ago, we told you that there will be a major change in CCC, and this has happened. And I can tell you, quite frankly, we are pleased with the transformation through which the group has progressed. What we said about trade 3 years ago, when those bars were very high, a lot of things have changed. Everything has changed over the last 3 years, so we would have been without chance had we not changed anything. And we're more and more well poised to face those changes. We're more technologically savvy, and also in terms of e-commerce. I can recall you that you asked us 5 years ago why we're moving into e-commerce, and because you were the leaders at that time in brick and mortar. And we said that we had to do that. Then we bought eobuwie. We do have e-commerce because we have the e-commerce platform. Now it turns out that together we're selling our own private brands and CCC. This is 5% of the sales. So the channels do not cannibalize one another. So we're growing. 40% of the sales there is Gino Rossi. So the CCC client is not a client of eobuwie, and that's actually quite good for us, that these are different client groups. If we look at the overall environment, our competitor is not just a German company, nor individual stores which are almost missing. It's not, street sales. Basically, our competitor is everybody, like a clothing store, food stores that are now selling shoes. So then large platforms, e-commerce platforms that are entering the country or already are in the country. So today you have to trade differently. That's why we made the decision that we're going to be more omni-channel, and we're going to build this channel. This has launched well. There are costs linked to that. Those costs have been reported in 2019, including the costs of launching Modivo, which took us 5 months more time because of certain things. E-Seismic took some time. We're waiting this year to monetize projects that we delivered in 2019. And we are the leader on the market. So we want to have 7 billion in sales just in shoes. We have only a single store for clothing. And even so, we have quite big sales, and we're considered, we have our own brands, we have our own sales channels, and this is something that we won't destroy or squander. I don't want you to think that I believe that everything's okay. Of course, everything is okay in terms of these projects, but we've committed some errors. Certain things have surprised us. The weather, once again, has surprised us. We don't want to tell anybody that we're dependent on the weather. Things are changing. We are changing. That's why we're looking at all-year footwear, sportswear for shoes, and we're thinking about being more fashionable than a store that just handles short-term weather changes. So we've changed a lot very quickly. We've been successful. Our vigilance was somehow tempered by the high margins we had in the past. But this is the work we've done over the last 2 years, and this will have a major impact on our ability to perform in upcoming seasons and where we will be. And we'll have a totally different capacity. As you can see, we're growing. There are very few companies, perhaps none in Europe, is growing as fast as ours in this industry. No one else has a concept like ours at CCC or in eobuwie. So I believe that all of the things that we have, and we have several strengths, so if we manage the business well and sagely, we'll bring the business into positive territory. Why won't we do that this year? It's quite clear. All of the things that have been deployed, we need to have some tolerance for errors. So we're going to improve things from the second half of this year, and that's the case because we'll begin with a new collection. We're coming in at the right time of the year. We had inventories. We had to do major price reductions because we had too much inventory, so we were late. And so in Western markets, this was a big problem. So this year we've decided that we're going to enter the market with our product a month earlier, and that means we won't sell at lower margins. We're going to start selling new collections and new products more quickly. So the marketing itself has to change and how we do marketing. Things that we did in the past were quite good. We had sports campaigns. We had a UNICEF campaign. Then we had the branded sports shoes products. We sold 2.5 million pairs of shoes additionally, manufactured by others at decently high margins. And so the campaign did quite a bit for us. We're the leader of sports shoes sales. And 3 years ago we didn't have any such shoes that were branded. So then we have the brand, Lasocki brand. So we're selling some 20 million shoes. So we've not done any advertising to strengthen that brand. So we're going to think about our own brands and not on the channels of sale. We're not really sure if e-commerce is going to grow more quickly or the brick-and-mortar stores. Brick-and-mortar stores sales should grow like 2% over a couple of years, while e-commerce will grow at 12% a year. So the whole market will grow because we have inflation, there's greater need, and the direction we're following will continue to flourish. So we're going to be more selective in terms of the locations where we open stores. We've got very attractive rental offers. So building stores is generating a good contribution for us. So we're going to focus basically here on cash. So we are and will continue to be aggressive. There's no other company in this marketplace that would have 34% of the business. And so you've got, the leader can do more because you have cheaper costs of reaching the media and every square meter. Let me give you one parameter when we talk about advertising a product. So in our branch, if we represent 28% of the market, we spent 7%. We accounted for 7% of spending for advertising sales. And so that's a mistake we shouldn't have done. So if we have 30% of the market, we should spend money because all of our competitors spent more than they have market shares. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have that top line. I think with slide 12, if we can switch to slide 12. So you can see the decline in profitability. So I'm looking at, like for like, negative 3%. That's what happened just in December, because we had positive like for likes up until then, even though we had closed Sundays in Poland. So if you looked at all of those square meters, we opened too many large stores, and they reduce this graph. So perhaps our store's a little too large. if we look at the two-floor store with J, this was not a good idea, but we'll have Iobuvio downstairs, and so CCC will have a constriction in its size to 900 square meters, and so we have maybe 12 or 15 stores where we made a mistake in terms of going a little too large. We're going to make some modifications there, and we're going to be selling 300, 400 square meters. So the result of this slide comes from our offering not being well matched. We were well prepared for winter, and we had, shoes that had additional linings for winter. So who would have bought those kind of shoes this year? Everybody's wearing standard shoes without the linings. So we've got to be prepared that there will be no longer winter. Of course, we're producing 8 months in advance. We have to have more shoes, having in mind that we didn't sell everything. So not many things change in these shoes, so we can bring out and put them on the shelf some of these shoes that look as if they're new. Our industry is different. We don't have liquidation of shoes, so because people come to us because of good prices, not because there's a low price or the reduced price, but if we get the right shoe size range and a decent price at the beginning of the season, we can sell all of our shoes. So there's a lot of potential in this business plan. And so these are things that we can do. We've got potential to achieve in the margin. We're going to have to increase prices because we have inflation. And we're below the market price in terms of our products. So we're selling some 70 million pairs of shoes. We're able to increase the prices. There's a lot of potential for us here. So I understand if you make some of the tweaks to the calculation, we might find ourselves way out in space, but we have a collection that we've bought some time ago that will be coming in the spring, but we have to respect our products better, and we don't want to sell the third pair for 1 grosz. We want to ideally locate store categories and distribution channels, so we know that the collection in Switzerland is different. We have a different collection of shoes in Russia. These are things that we've learned and mastered, and that's how we're going to do our new collection. So it will be shown more or earlier, and having in mind the changes in the climate. These are some of the things that basically caused us to sleep through the winter. We thought that the change in the winter was just an accident, kind of a one-off. Then it happened. So this year we've understood that this is going to be the standard. So, of course, we're the leader in retail channel, e-commerce, but we don't really know which avenue we should follow to the very end. So we want to advertise our Gino Rossi brand, Lasowski, Jennifer Dizzy. So we want to focus on advertising our own brands. These are things that we haven't done in the past because we talked about digitization and some of the other reducing factors. So we can throw away all of those marketing textbooks that you can find in bookshops because the method of marketing has changed. We've got great prices, great products, and great locations, but so if you open up on it in the morning when you're shaving and you can see that somebody else has, a major price cut. So these are things we're going to be able to do much more effectively. So to wrap up, we've built scale both in retail, brick and mortar, as well as in online e-commerce. We've got an unrivaled value chain, Modivo, eSeisme, CCC, and there are a lot of things that we've successfully done, and we're very pleased with them. We've replaced all of our IT systems. As you know, this is not something that we did without incurring any problems. This coincided with certain things that shouldn't have coincided. So for a theoretically short period of time, we weren't able to buy new products because of changes in the IT system, and so we missed a whole season. Then in May, we didn't have good weather. Then we had to sell a bunch of shoes at lower prices. We have to be more aggressive in terms of Black Friday or some of these other campaigns. We have to be more aggressive because these are things that disappear and you can't catch up. We've got an e-commerce world which mercilessly utilizes every single market opportunity. And these are things that we're learning. We've overcome many difficult things. We took a lot of initiatives on our shoulders, a lot of integration. Fogla, Gino Rossi, DZ, eSeisme, expansion of Modivo. There were a large number of things that we did, not mentioning Adler, Romania, and a franchise network we took over in Poland. These were all good decisions. Of course, the upcoming seasons will assess us, but perhaps Switzerland was not something we needed. But this is an entrance to a different level. I was thinking here about acquisitions of companies and problem. This coincided with the replacement of the IT systems, and then we decided to replace everything in Switzerland over a period of 4 months in the head office. We've done the restructuring in Fogla. Our costs at the head office are down 15 million. We reduced 120 people. We've dismissed them. We don't have an office. We don't have IT. We have 15 million in savings in francs. So we're shutting down 1/3 of the business. So there are things that really weren't needed and a lot of stores that weren't profitable. So 1/3 of the Swiss business is being closed this year. So you have an average lease term of 18 months. So if you add Switzerland, so there'll be some small millions, but in 2021, it should not generate any losses. That's our objective. We want to master the Swiss problem. We have some problems. The problems, they sell more shoes. We sell shoes less expensive, but the costs are much higher. We're not profitable there. We have bigger margins, but we're selling shoes still too inexpensively. Our whole network had to learn this. We have to look at the medium sales price. So then we look at Gino Rossi. We need other brands to build our store presence. Then we have Gosov and this concept for sports shoes. So we have to increase the average sales price. We won't put shoes on people's hands. So we're fully aware that we're fighting not for the margin. We're looking at the final margin. We're thinking about the final margin. So we have to retain more of the final margin. That's the major objective of the management. Up until now, we've had the CapEx, and now we won't have investments above 200 million. Isn't that the right CEO? We're going to stick to that. We have to reduce our receivables at the end of the year. We have to complete the integration with Switzerland and the expansion of Modivo. These are the most important objectives for us. So I think that's it. So if you have some questions, if you want to fire your questions off at us, we're ready, and we're very open. Maybe that's a little too much if we encourage you to fire at us, but we can listen to any questions that you may want to pose. I wanted to ask you, if you look at the debt reduction to the end of the year, or having the negative net debt to EBITDA, what is your purpose? Above all, financial stability is our goal. We want to make sure that the company is ready for an important circumstance. So looking at market opportunities, it seems to us that we have a good model, and if we refine it, it will be scalable again. We want to observe what we can do with this financial model, and we want to have that financial safety. So you're thinking about accumulating cash for another phase or taking down debt for a new investment cycle. So we want to have financial security. Would the dividend policy be linked to that? We want to follow the same dividend policy that we have. So it's 33 to 66% of net profit. Thank you. I'm from Insignis. I have two questions. Something I found missing, if you could dwell on it at greater length. If you look at design, you've talked about a lot the improvement in quality. We talked about the low quality of eobuwie, even though there's a low level of complaints. So people want quality in terms of their appearances, but there wasn't very much about design. I wanted to ask you about, is something happening in terms of how you design eobuwie? So theoretically, 2 years ago, you had a problem because the best people went to Challenger and they came back to the main brand Reserved. So you talked about costs and marketing, but you didn't say too much about design. That's the first thing. And the next thing is third-person browns. At our meetings, I talked about this subject. I didn't think this up, but there was some sort of London fund said that if you have more share of these external brands, you won't be a fashion house, but you'll be a distributor of footwear. Perhaps I framed that differently, but you're starting to compete to some extent with Foot Locker or Intersport, God forbid, by selling too many foreign brands of shoes. And then what's going to happen with Lasocki, which would then be neglected? What's the proper percentage of third-party brands? And what's your concept for driving your own brand so as you're not just a distributor of other people's footwear? There are many, many variables here. I can give you the parameter, for example. If we talk about sportswear, we're not getting the best brands. We're talking about shoes, 200, 250 zlotys. So the least expensive Reebok, New Balance. But Marcin doesn't even get that cheap shoes because they divide up that distribution. So let me give you an example. 2.5 million pairs of shoes, 40% margin on average per shoe. 67 watts profit. Then if you get printing, 57% margin, 4 million sales, 35 watts. We're talking about brands. The final margin is much higher for us than for others, even though we sold twice as much. By adding more expensive products, we've been bailing ourselves out a little bit. Before we redesign and expand our own shoes, like we have Gunsoft, Gino Rossi, so we had to utilize those shoes. So I'm not going to mention the brands, but we have very good experience, and they represent, several percentage points of the sales. What's the percentage of third-party shoes? You've parameterized everything very precisely. You can't run a sports section without other brands. All of the other brands were able to replace, but Puma, Adidas, Reebok, you can't make up for them using. I'm just trying to think, in 2 years, what's percentage of your own shoes? If we look about sneakerization, our competitors, 40% of their shoes are sneakers. So I think it's probably going to be 20% would be other people's brands. But these shoes are selling well in our e-commerce. You have to have the shoes to be present on the market. If you look at our products, we've made a lot of progress. We're expanding the collections. And so we have better, more expensive, more attractive, fashionable shoes. These are things that we have to do to make sure that we don't exaggerate. We can't be a fashion store, turn CCC into a fashion store. But I think, we'll become more of a fashion store by some 15%. So in the future, could you come and visit us in the company? It'll be easier. You go to Milano. We're actually publishing live. We'd invite you to come to our company headquarters. We've built a new pattern room, a production development room. We're quite sophisticated. We've invested in product development skills. People are concentrating on our product. We've got some 80 people working on that. So come and visit us in Polkowice. In April, we'll have an investor day to show our technological capabilities. You have to see it firsthand. This is quite amazing technology, but this is not something that you can talk about. You have to see it. And the next thing is that we'll have targeted marketing communication, and we're very calm about design. It has to be an accessory. Come and visit us in our HQ, and once you see our products, you won't believe that CCC is going to have them. I'm not going to say they're going to be expensive. I'm just saying that the quality to price factor. So Karo was with us on the IPO, and the journalist asked you what sort of shoes you're wearing. And I said, I'm wearing Gino Rossi, because that was 16 years ago. And Karo said to me, I hope he doesn't turn this into a scandal, that he's not using his own shoes. And I look like a guy who would wear shoes with a yellow tag, and now I wear our products. Employees wear our shoes. Well, people get a discount. We have to identify with what the company does. There's going to be a lot of changes. We won't be ashamed of our products. We've got new brands that are being Acrola, HH, and some of the other shoes that Marcin and Goda that are being sold. Gino Rossi shoes. This is a totally different, world. As Marcin, as putting up those hefty margins, will have very good prices, available products of good quality. Let me say a little about Gino Rossi. We purchased this company, so it's not really going to be a boutique. It'll be Gino Rossi Premium, which will be sold in 40 boutiques. Will have limited access, and Marcin will have it in 30 Jobovia stores and e-commerce. It's going to be 50% more expensive than Lasocki, and we'll have a new standard in terms of quality and prices. And I think we're going to be able to sell 22 million pairs of shoes. We're talking about accessories, for men and women, children, bags and wallets. I'm talking about a margin of 50 zlotys. And so then you can calculate whether or not our acquisition was sensible. Without quality, without a higher average ticket, we won't be able to make money on the long run. With the old network, So we've got different franchise stores. So I think only 40 remain. Is it the same? Is it the same collection in CC? It's going to be a premium collection, and only in part. We'll have special shoes made for the Gino Rossi network, and we'll have a special collection there for Gino Rossi Premium, and a small percentage of it will be from CCC stores. So in terms of design, our Savona shoes, tall shoes, received an award from Twój Styl magazine. It's a very fashionable product. And so our influencer network, this is our design from CCC onto the Gino Rossi brand. It's a great product. The question is when the premiere is going to take place. But we're going to do things gradually. Well, we had more prizes in awards last year than in our whole history. Basically, we want to make sure that the business starts flying, and we're well prepared to make sure that the business is going to fly. Marcin received some awards, best application, best stores. We don't even have time to pick up all of those awards. We don't feel that we're winners. We'll feel like we're winners when we deliver the results we've talked about in this presentation. Are there any other questions? I wanted to ask, if you break down your EBIT margin, you've got some targets up until 2022. If we look at the margin EBIT in previous years, in Eobuwie, you had a higher EBITDA margin. What would the structure? I'm not really sure. How do you want to achieve the 7-8% margin? It will be done on a linear basis over the next 2-3 years, or are you thinking about some major jumps? You're thinking about the group or Eobuwie? I'm thinking about the group. As we've indicated in this presentation, growth and profitability is driven by the gross margin. We've said that we can build the ticket value. We have increased the value of the ticket. Over the next 3 years, we want to increase it by 12, 13 zlotys. The next thing is that we have the costs, the CapEx, IT, e-commerce, all of those construction expenses have been incurred, and that's part of the past. So we'll be able to improve our operational dynamics, and then we'll ramp up our sales density per square meter. We see a risk in terms of labor expenses, so we assume that we'll have growth here. You can see the figures on slide 34, but we believe this will be offset by lower lease expenses over the next 3 years. Some 45% of our contracts will mature, even if they won't mature, but we're unwaveringly renegotiating the rates. So we're also counting on being able to have positive outcomes. So if I look at the breakdown between 2.5% and 8%, I would say that 2 percentage points will be the growth in the margin. Part of it will be because of higher density of revenue, and the third is because of cost reductions versus revenues. I saw that there was another question back there. I'm Paweł Gierczak. It seems that e-commerce is going very, very well. And as I look at the growth and profitability, you're a much better organization than Zalando. If we were to apply Zalando's metrics to the e-commerce portion, this would be more than double the current capitalization of the group. Are you capable of drawing on Zalando's strategy, the cross-selling portion? Are you able to add new products to the customer base you have? Because it seems that it's a very loyal customer group and it continues to expand. As I mentioned, this is one of our major assumptions to monetize better traffic. So customers are making purchases 4 to 5 times a year. As we expand our assortment, we're able to increase the rate of visits to above 10, 12, 15 times. The most important thing is the launch of Motivo. We want to do good marketing to make sure that we have a good market share and have a bigger level of sales in apparel, which will lead to some discounts and rebates. And we want to tap into the traffic that we already generate through eobuwie. Is it possible for you to sell much more apparel through e-commerce than now? One of our competitors has some 35% of their sales coming from shoes. The rest is from apparel. There's a lot of upside there. So we've said 10-15% is our target because we have a relatively low base. But over the upcoming years, we plan to see major growth in terms of percentage year on year, but there's a lot of room for us to grow. So I would imagine, yes, that my answer to your question is yes. Following Poland, which market would be dominant? You've mentioned Romania. If you look at some of the other closer markets, which ones offer the potential to replicate Poland's business? So CEE is the most important for us. This is where we've grown the fastest and we're earning the most. The profitability of the organization is very important to us, and we're very pleased with sales in Hungary, Czech, and Romania, but also Bulgaria and Greece. So if we look at the population, Romania offers the greatest potential. But as I mentioned, we want to build our position to ensure that roughly 20-some-odd% market share is something that we would have. This seems quite reasonable because this is the level of market share we have in Poland, whereas in Central Eastern Europe, the competition is much less pronounced because Western competition is not present on most of those markets. Ultimately, we plan to grow in Western markets, Western Europe. We're testing those markets. We want to select 2-3 markets where we would grow more strongly, but the profitability is lower there than in Central and Eastern Europe. That's linked to, say, logistics and bigger marketing expenses. But if we look at the potential further down the road, then it seems that this step would be necessary. One more question about the brick and mortar model. So merging with Deichmann, should I go home? Would that contribute to your procurement size? We won't gain anything by increasing the size of our procurement. That wouldn't give us anything. It's good to have rivalry on the marketplace. And it means that it doesn't put us to sleep. I mean, competition keeps us up. I'm from JP Morgan. I wanted to ask about Switzerland. If restructuring is unsuccessful, is it possible that you could just close that operation along with the lease? Lease is elapsing. What do you want to hear? I think the question was quite clear, but I was clear too. What would you like to hear about Switzerland? Today, we're not happy with January, but the previous CEO, who's no longer the CEO, gave 79% discounts using radio advertising. We have better margins. Let's wait to hear what's happening in March and April. We've got bigger margins, collections, bigger prices, then we'll be at home. If it doesn't deliver a result, the length of a contract is 18 months. And so we'll close 87 stores, and closing doesn't cost us anything because the lease term comes to an end. The whole business would cost us maybe 500,000 francs. There's no security. So basically, we could leave there any day of the year. It would be a waste of the effort we spent over the last 1.5 years. All the systems were on a good path in terms of costs. It's a little anxious because we're comparing to the things that were done last year. In March, we'll know more. I'd like to rescue the business, or at least half of that. That's the most profitable portion. We had 220 stores in some small stores, towns. We had a couple stores, Bingo and something like that. So we're trying to correct the path. And if we don't, I'm not in a comfort zone if I'm running an unprofitable business. And something is going to happen. Either we're going to continue doing it, or I don't know what you wanted to hear, but so the cost base has been changed. We've lowered it by 15 some million francs. We have long-term effects. So we changed systems, and that's why we entered the e-commerce. So there's a large amount of traffic. So we've turned off an engine that could be helpful. So eobuwie without marketing is doing very well just by redirecting traffic to the Vogler website. So things will either go forward or they'll go down. It won't take us long to make a decision. We spent 10 million francs. We got 10% of the market with 50 million in assets. So even if we wrap up the stores and selling off the stock, we'll get the money back. So we haven't lost everything. So today we've made such a breakthrough. It would be a shame to make a decision today. So in March, things could go the other direction. So this year, Switzerland has a lot of snow. There's a lot of specialist shoes with protectors, with liners. So we've learned a lot in Switzerland. We have the Ghost brand we took over, which is a comfortable footwear for older people. We learned how to use membranes and others. It's a totally different organizational culture. We learned a lot about after taking over Gino Rossi. We have a more luxurious, comfortable leisure wear. So we're able to distribute the benefits we've acquired across our entire network. As we've said, in 2021, we won't see any losses in Switzerland. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the web? Probably the last 2 or 3 questions. We have a lot of shoes in design here, so you can take a look at them, touch them, and see the differences. And you can like them. From the first question, will Dariusz Miłek and the other management board members plan to buy shares at the current price levels? I don't think we can give a direct comment on that. It's good that you're watching me, that we can't make any statements about that subject. Maybe it's not linked to this strategy, but having in mind recent events, the coronavirus in China can have an impact on your delivery schedules. If you think about supplies, it seems that in the media this is overheated. You've got the new year extended and maybe some dispatching of products. We've got 9 containers in China. We've got 40 containers in Bangladesh. So it's something that's totally negligible compared to the 20 million pairs. But of course, it's gaining a lot of credence in the media, and we hope that they overcome this problem as quickly as possible. But in terms of business, it won't affect us. Coming back to this strategy, how should we see the financial objectives under the new strategy, having in mind the fact that the company did not always achieve the strategy? Should we treat the bottom level of the range as an ambitious target? As the chairman said, we believe that in each one of these line items, there's some amount of conservatism in our objectives. So we have some safety cushions. So we believe that these ranges are achievable, where I've mentioned that we have greater ambitions there. And I think that will fit. So there's a huge machine, a good model, and we've audited it. We've also looked at the assumptions for this model. We know where we're conservative, we know where we're realistic, and we know where we're ambitious. And we wanted to interconnect them with the realistic ones. Our goals are realistic, and so the strength of this strategy is that it's been decomposed or cascaded into KPIs, and we know who needs to tighten the screws and which screws need to be tightened. And we know who we've entrusted these objectives for performance. So we've also turned off expenditures, no new projects, no new acquisitions over the next 3 years. So nothing should happen over the next 2 years unless we stand for a moment and think up something. But basically, we want to regain the former profitability of the company. The final question about your operations in the DACH countries. Do you plan to sell Carvogel and the network of shoe stores in Austria if you don't achieve your profitability? Of course, we'll get rid of it if it's not generating profits for the company. Let me say, we want to regain profitability. As long as I'm in this company and I'm not going anywhere, this objective will be realized. We're talking about every single asset that's not profitable. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Since there are no more questions, and it looks that way, so we'd like to thank you very much for your comments and for your attendance. We have some upcoming events. If you have any questions, give us a call and we'll happily respond to your questions. Thank you.